What's cracking everyone, my name is Eric and today we're back at it again with scripting. So last time we actually looked at UI design with color codes, but the video before that, our last scripting video, we talked about loops where I said that we would skip the for loops. So we're still going to wait with the for loops unfortunately, but this video will be necessary for next video which will be about those for loops. So before we actually get started, let's just cover last video's challenge. So the challenge was to figure out what the color code FFFF33 was. Let's actually just think about it quickly. So the two dominant colors are the two dominant colors are RNG. So FFFF33. So the two with the highest values are RNG. The two first ones, red and green. So red and green mixed together gives you yellow. And on top of that, both the blue value and the red and green value are fairly high, so it should be a light yellow. So let's just enter it in, FFFF33. And you can see this gives us a nice bright yellow, just like we expected. So yeah, that was last video's challenge. Let's get started. I'm just going to delete this screen GUI and open our script here. So here we are with a blank script. So as I said, today we are going to cover if statements. So I'm gonna say if true then. So this enters a scope, and we didn't actually talk about this in last video about loops. But whenever you go one space in like this, you enter what's called a scope. So scopes are pieces of code that only run on certain conditions. Here, if you might remember, in the this is just like the while loop, where this is also a scope because it only runs on certain conditions. So the if statement is another type of scope. The thing is, it's just not a loop. But yeah. Also, the space that you enter, like every time you enter a new scope, you go one space in. This spacing here is called an indent. So as a general rule of thumb, whenever you indent once, you go inside a new scope. So let's look at the if statement. So the if statement is a statement that runs once if the given condition is true. And that is great for when we want to check something. Maybe let's say that a player needs to have 500 cash or more to buy a tool. Then we use the if statement to first check if he has the 500 cash or more, and then if he has it, then we go ahead and do that. And if it doesn't have the 500 cash, then we'll just skip the entire block of code. So I'm gonna create a variable. I'm gonna say local variable as always, and I'm gonna say local number. No, let's do variable. Sorry, equals 500. So let's start with one of the most basic forms of reading of variables. So we say if. So actually, before that, the way we format an if statement is by saying if condition and then we say then. So first, it's very similar to the loops. First, we declare what type of scope it is. It's an if statement. Then the condition, and then we say then to declare that the scope is started, and then we declare that the scope ends. So let's start by making our condition. We're gonna say if variable, which is the name of our variable, equals 500, then, and we're gonna say variable is 500. So we'll talk more in a bit. We'll talk about why we use two equal signs in a bit. But as you can see, we have set our variable to be 500, and then this variable says if the variable is equals to 500, then it will say variable is equal to 500. So let's go ahead and test that out. So I'm gonna go to view, open the output console, and then I'm gonna say play. And hopefully, what we should see is that it says variable is 500. Or whatever it is that I set it to print. So we just wait for it to load in here. And then you'll see that it says variable is 500 because our variable is 500. If we just wait for it to load in so we can stop it, that would be magnificent. There we go, and I'm gonna stop it again. Now let's try that again when the variable is not equal to 500. Let's say 700. So now what it's going to do is that it looks at the variable, which it then sets to 700. It then says if the variable is 500, which isn't true, because that isn't true, it just skips this entire if statement. So that means that this entire scope or block of code, as we also call it, gets entirely ignored. So what we should see now is that it doesn't print anything. So we're just going to load in here, wait for it to load in, and after I've spawned in, we should be able to see that nothing has printed. So by now it should have printed variable is 500, but it hasn't printed that yet. So you can clearly see that it doesn't print that, meaning that the entire if statement gets ignored as it should. So now let's talk about why we use two equals to sign. So the thing is, we use one equals to sign to set values, and then we use two equal signs to read values. Could we use one? Sorry, could we use one equals to sign? I mean, yeah, we could, but the thing is, it gets kind of confusing. So yeah, one equals to sign is equal to when you say one equals to sign, it means that you're setting a new value to something. So if we just set 1 equals a sign here, the computer would get confused. So it would be in an if statement, meaning that it should read the variable, but there's only 1 equals a sign, meaning that it should also set the variable. So it's unsure if it should read the variable because it's in an if statement, or if it should set a new variable because there's only 1 equals a sign. So that is why we set 2 equals a sign. So yeah, and you can do the same with bools. So remember, we talked about bool variables or values which are either true or false. So I'm gonna do variables equal to true, and then I'm gonna say print, and then I'm gonna say variable is true. Let's go ahead and run that, and you should see the exact same result. And you can also do the same thing with strings. You could compare two strings, and if they are the same, then yeah. And then you can see variable is true. Now we just wait for it to load in so we can stop. But yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and stop it again, and you can see that print the variable is true because it's because it's true. Yeah, obviously I'm not going to show the same thing with false. Another thing you can do when dealing with bool values is that you can say if variable. So remember, the thing is that if statements they look at if a certain condition is true. So when let's go back and set this to 500. So yeah, I'm gonna do if variable equals to 500. Now, it doesn't actually read that the in the end it doesn't actually run this if statement because the variable is equal to 500. It runs it because this piece right here that reads it is true. So what it actually does is that it reads this variable and compares the two. So it says is variable equal to 500. So we're asking it to read if the variable is equal to 500. Now that is true that the variable is equal to 500, meaning that this entire thing is the exact same as saying true. So the if statement only really looks at if something is true or false, if that makes sense in the end. That also means that using bools, we could just say if true then, or we could just say if variable. Sorry, this is getting a little confused, but imagine it like this. This condition is true because the condition is a variable and that variable is true, meaning that this should run as well. So instead of saying if variable is equal to true, you can just say if variable, and that should give us the exact same result. So if we just spawn in here, you'll notice that it should say variable is true again, because remember the condition is still true. An if statement doesn't need to read anything, it just needs a condition that is true. And there you go, variable is true. So that is beautiful, as you can see. Another thing is not. So we can do the complete opposite by putting not in front of it. So let's set it to false. Let's say we want something to run. Let's say that we only want this to run if the variable is false. Now I could say, obviously I could say if variable equals false. That is possible. But to get an even cleaner look, you could say not variable. So when you put not in front of something, it takes the opposite of that statement. it looks at that means that it will only run if the statement is false. So either that means that I can say not variable instead of variable equals false, and that is the exact same. So now that I've put not in front of it, it's the complete opposite. Now this if statement only runs if the condition is false. So let's look at that. So the variable is set to false. So and I've said if not variable, and then it should print. So yeah, variable is false. It should now print variable is not true, and you can see that it says variable is not true. So that is absolutely brilliant. So yeah, let's go ahead and stop it again. And now we're going to talk about and the and and or operator. So I'm going to create two numbers. I'm going to call number one. I'm going to create a variable called num1, which is going to be 200, and another variable called num2, which is going to be 500. So now we're going to talk about the and an or operator. So let's say that you only want to run something when, that an if statement should run only if several conditions are true. So let's say that for this statement to run, the num1 variable needs to be 200, and on top of that, the num2 variable needs to be 500. So obviously, what I could do is I could say if num1 equals 200, then I can make another if statement in that saying if num2 equals 500, then and that would work. But as you can see, this adds a lot of unnecessary lines when we can combine it. So what I can do is use the and operator. So I say if num1 equals 200 and num2 equals 500, and that is the exact same. So you're basically combining two statements. So as long as both of these statements are true, that it should work. So we're gonna say actually no, for similar to keep it similar, I'm gonna make them both 500, and then I'm gonna say 500 right here, and then I'm gonna say both numbers are 500. So right now it reads if both of these are 500 at the same time, and if they are, it should read both numbers are 500. So once again, we should expect it to now print both numbers are 500, which it does right here because both of those statements are true. Now, obviously, if one of those statements weren't true, here, let me go back and show it again. Let me just stop it here. So if one of these statements weren't true, but the other one is, it wouldn't work because remember, it's an AND operator. They all need to be they need to be true. Every single statement needs to be true. So let me demonstrate that by saying by setting num1 to 200. Now number two still equals to 500, but this first statement is no longer true. So this entire if scope is no longer true and will not be run. So let's go ahead and test that, and we should not see anything in the output console now. So let's go ahead and test that out, and you can see that it printed right here, but nothing else gets printed, meaning that the if scope didn't run, which is what we expected. So let's talk about the OR operator then, which is pretty similar to the AND operator. So I'm gonna make a new if statement, and then I'm gonna say if num1 equals to 500 or num2 equals to 500, then I'm gonna say and then I'm gonna say one or more variable is 500. So just to demonstrate that this is an OR operator, this just means that one of these statements needs to be true. So remember, this first statement isn't true. Num1 is 200, not 500, but num2 is still 500, meaning that this should still work because I'm using the OR operator. So, and you can see that it says one or more variable is 500, which is correct. In this case, only one variable is 500, but you get the gist of it. So let's talk about the else statement. So, keeping our numbers here, we are we are gonna talk about the else statement. So let's say that I'm gonna keep it to one variable this time. If local variable equals to, let's do 300. So let's say that if the variable is 300, you print something, but if it isn't equal to 300, then you print something else. Now, the one thing you can do, and we actually didn't talk about this, is you can first say if variable is equal to 300, then print variable is 300. Now, the another thing is you can use not equals to, which is like that squiggly thing. I forgot what it's called in English. And then 300 then. So this basically means not equal to. So what it does is that it runs this if statement, which reads if the variable is 300. And if it is, it prints this. And then it enters a new variable that says, or sorry, that then it enters a new if statement that reads if it's not equal to 300. And if it's not equal to 300, then it will say variable is not 300. So we could do that using the not equal to operator. But this is obviously, once again, inconvenient slash inefficient. So yeah, I just know that every time I say we could do that, it's probably because I have some sort of way to do it. So I'm going to say if variable equals to 300, then we're going to say print. We're going to say variable is 300. And then right outside this, the end of this first statement, I'm going to say enter, and then I'm going to say else. And then I'm going to hit enter again. So you'll notice that we now have two statements. And you've probably already figured out what this does. So it basically, if the first condition was not true, then it will run this second condition no matter what. So it reads this and it says if variable is equal to 300, then it obviously prints this, and then it stops right there. But if that isn't the case, if variable isn't 300, it still goes through with the else script. So this is like a backup. This is everything that happens when the first condition isn't true. So right now it should still print a variable is 300, but let's go ahead and say 400. So what we should see is that it skips through the first statement because the variable isn't 300, and then it should say go to the else statement and say variable is not 300, and you can see that it says variable is not 300. Now you'll also notice that it doesn't print variables 300 because it just skips this first print statement. So this entire part, guess if I can mark it properly. This entire part just gets ignored, and then it proceeds to with this one. Another thing we can do is else if statements, so which is once again very similar to how this works. So first I'm going to check if the variable is 300, then I'm going to print variable is 300. Now I can say else if, which is basically a combination of an if statement and an else statement, like the name suggests. So this is like a new if statement, but it only happens if the first statement is not true. So it's basically like an else statement, but it still needs a certain condition to run. And very similar to the if statement, I'm gonna say my condition, and then I still need to say then. So it's pretty similar to the if statement, except this one only gets checked if the first statement is not true. So basically like an else statement that has a condition. And then I'm going to say else if the variable is equal to 400, I'm going to say print variable is 400, and then I can say else. And you can keep like adding these else if statements, but you can only have one else statement. The else statement only runs if everything else is not true. So by this point, if the variable is not equal to 300 nor 400, it will run the else statement. So I'm going to say print variable is not 300 nor 400, like that. So let's set it to 400. So right now what should happen is that it reads this first statement, which is not true, so it goes through to the second statement. Now the second statement is an else if statement, so it still needs to check the condition. And in this case, the condition is true, so it should print the variable is 400. So let's go ahead and check that out. So we wait for it to load in as per usual, and we should see that it stops doing the second statement, and then it says variable is 400, which is true. So yeah, as a final thing, Yeah, as a final thing, we are gonna add in the 500, add in the number 500 to the variable. And what we should see now is that it skips the first statement, then skips the second statement, and then it doesn't check the third statement. It just goes through with it. So right now it should print out variable is not 300 nor 400, which is what we are expecting. And just like we expected, it says that in the output. So that was pretty much it for today. So I've got a pretty good challenge for you ready. So for the challenge for next video, you will have to check if a number is even. Yeah, you will have to check if a number is even. So I haven't talked about this. I have only talked about basic mathematical equations, but you'll need to use the modulus operator. So I'll explain a bit of it, and hopefully you should be able to use it. So the modulus operator is basically it gives the rest of something after you've divided it. So it takes how in this case it says 8 modulus 4. So it basically takes it says how many times can you divide 8 by 4, which is 2 times. And after that you have 0 left because I don't know how to put it really, but 8 is a whole multiple of 4. Whereas if you said 9, it's the exact same thing. You can divide a 9 by 4 2 times, but then you'll still have a rest of 1. You'll have 1 left. I'm not really good with my English math terms, but I'll see if I can explain it better in the description. So using this, you need to create an if statement that checks if a variable is equal. No, what am I talking about? Even or not. So you're gonna say local number, and then it's gonna be 2, and then you have to make an if statement that says says the number is even, and if this is 3, then it should say the number is odd. So good luck with that one. It'll be a bit more challenging than per usual, but I think it's somewhat doable. So I'll see if I can find a better definition of the modulus operator. I was not so good at explaining that. But yeah, that was pretty much it for today. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I'll hit you up in the next video, which is going to be about for loops. But yeah, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.